everybody, welcome to The Sweat. As you can see, I'm not joined by Emerson Lazia. No, Vacation Emerson has been replaced by the one and only Reid Fowler.
Yes, easily the smartest decision we've ever made in this show, but we got a lot to get to: NBA ADPs and NFL QBs.
Plus, our baseball experts, they're going to weigh in on who you should be rostering tonight if you like winning and making money.
So buckle up and get ready for
The Sweat. Our baseball guys are here. Steve Buchanan, Pierce Dietrich, and Garion Thorne. Guys, thanks for joining us. All right, since our launch on Tuesday, all the way back in the day, we've been bringing you fantasy news and expert analysis so you can build your lineups and win money, which everybody, likes to do.
Right, and today is no different. We're starting out with our baseball trio, and we're going right into chase and fade. So, guys, we're going to jump right into it.
Yeah, chase or fade, agree or disagree. So, Steve, you're going to get the party started here. Chase or fade this. At $9,500, Clay Buckholtz is not only the most expensive pitcher, but also the best option on tonight's 7-game slate. And Steve, actually saw a tweet you had about this earlier, and it was a GIF, but I can guess that you might be fading this one.
Well, I got two fades to start off with. First of all, Reid, you're in the big boy chair today, and that's what you landed on for a shirt?
Absolutely,
Man, I mean,
Steve.
He's Hawaiian, Steve.
You got to take some notes, Steve. You gotta
No,
take some
Steve,
notes.
he's from Hawaii. Like, he's
I
actually
think,
from Hawaii.
I don't know. I think Reid has been winning enough money. He needs a new wardrobe. But I'm also going to be fading Clay Buckholtz here. I mean, man, I hate everything about Clay Buckholtz chalk night. I can't even fathom paying up almost $10,000 for a pitcher that's on his fourth team since 2016. Look, give credit where it's due. He's been decent so far. I'll give him that. And against the Padres, it feels like a pretty good matchup. But the Padres, give them credit too. They've been hitting pretty well lately. 350 WOBA with a 200 ISO over their past 2 weeks. I feel like stacking the Padres might just be the pivot play to take on tonight. So Buckholtz, oh, absolutely not. What a disgusting slate.
So the blazing hot sweatometer take that you had was about Reid's shirt, but let's see if somebody else can get it going. Pierce, what do you think? Are you going to chase or fade Buckholtz playing tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to fade it. And I think most people have that gut feeling of you can't play Clay Buckholtz, and they probably should stick with that. Don't follow the Clay Buckholtz chalk, just like Steve said. Buckholtz has been fine. I mean, he doesn't have enough games to register, but he's got a top 5 fastball in the limited sample size. He's got a top 10 cutter in the limited sample size. But the problem is the cutter is hit or miss. Sometimes it's electric, and sometimes it gets smashed around. And San Diego is 4th in baseball versus the cutter. So I don't think Steve's that crazy saying stack the Padres. The right-handed bats look pretty good. He's got some reverse splits. But he's also not good against lefties either. People are going to overreact. But he's got a 200 BABIP versus lefties. So you can play lefty bats from the Padres. I think I said Chargers, too. I'm sorry.
Getting our sports a little mixed up there. Garion, small sample size. You could see some decent numbers from Buckholtz. What do you think? Are you going to chase or fade this?
No, you have to fade it. And it just keeps devolving upon itself. Like, it starts as, can I use Clay Buckholtz in a GPP where he's going to be chalky? And the answer is obviously no. And then it's, well, I don't mind the chalk in a cash game. Can I use him in a cash game setting against the Padres? And as Steve talked about, I don't know if I'm buying like the actual success the Padres have had the last 2 weeks, but I will say I'm buying into the fact they're not striking out nearly as much as they were the first 4 months of the season in August, just 22.1%. And that's really what made the Padres just constantly the subject of our abuse when it came to streaming some of these lower end pitchers on DFS slates given a night. So if the strikeout upside is not going to be there, and it's certainly not with a guy like Buckholtz, you just can't use him. Like, there's no one tonight is in an ideal spot. So under that justification, at least use a pitcher who's got some upside.
So we're going to fade Buckholtz, and we're going to fade Reid's shirt for now.
that is just starting out clean. Thanks. I appreciate it, Steve. So next up, the Home Run Derby fixed Bryce Harper, and he's a good play tonight at St. Louis with a $5K salary. Pierce, are you chasing or fading this?
I'll chase it, but I don't believe that the Home Run Derby had anything to do with it. You look at Harper's numbers. He had a 226 BABIP before All-Star break, and now it's over 420. He's got a 200 increase in BABIP, so he was incredibly unlucky. Now he's getting really lucky. He has made one change. He's walking less, striking out more. Basically, he's got the Kelly Leak approach. He's not letting them walk him intentionally, swinging at pitches outside of the zone. The more balls he puts in play, the more chance he's going to get hits, he's going to get home runs. So he's doing the right thing. He's Bryce Harper, swing the bat.
Garen, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Pierce here. I actually have the exact same numbers written down about BABIP, so it's somewhat unfortunate. But I will say, in those time spans with the BABIP, there's almost no change in batted ball profile. Like, we're talking near identical fly ball, ground ball, line drive rates. The hard contact rate is within 1.5% of each other over the second and first half, and they're both above 40%. So Bryce Harper hasn't changed at all. Regression has just helped him significantly in this second half, and the approach in terms of swinging more often and swinging more freely, as Pierce was talking about, is really benefiting him. And then Luke Weaver's just been awful against left-handed bats so far this season, a 360 WOBA to left-handed bats. So on a night where everyone's saving at pitcher, you can easily afford Bryce Harper in your lineup. It might be a little chalky, but I think he might be worth it at this point.
And so before we get to Steve's great shirt and his great take, we got a 6-game suspension for Jose Urena last night for hitting Acuna. So it's 6-game suspension. But we'll go back to you, Bukes, with your, I guess, better shirt than mine. What is your take on this?
I mean, I don't think the home run derby fixed things. I think he just remembered, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to get paid this offseason, so I better stop sucking and actually do something in the second half. I think that's what fixed everything. I mean, look, you have to really like Harper tonight against Luke Weaver. I mean, he's been really poor against lefties, 360 WOBA, the 4.86 FIP, 10 of his 16 home runs allowed. And look, Harper's in the midst of a monster second half against righties in the second half, 495 WOBA, 40% hard hit rate with a 373 ISO. Look, we said that this slate is an absolute massacre when it comes to pitching options tonight. So you can load up almost on any hitters you want because you're not going to be paying up for any pitchers tonight. You're just going to take a shot in the dark and go, yeah, those guys look cool. I'll put them in my SP1 and my SP2. So you should be able to afford Harper, get him in there.
Really quick before we move on, this suspension, 6 games, is this gonna, what effect is this gonna have on the fantasy, landscape? Like, how do you see this playing out for you? Does it affect you at all, Steve?
I don't even know the first time I rostered Urena this season, so I don't know how much that's really gonna affect it. I mean, 6 games, I mean, that's, I don't know. I'm really torn on the debate here. I mean, I feel like that's kind of part of baseball, but the way he went about it, definitely what. Hold on, Garion. Well, calm down.
Hold on, Garion.
The way he went about it was definitely crappy. I mean, that was definitely an intent to injure there. I mean, if you're trying to brush a guy off, definitely do that. I'm all for that. But yeah, the way he went about it was pretty crappy. So I can understand the 6-game suspension.
Garion, it looks like you're ready to defend or get out there and say that you think this suspension is merited.
Oh, it's merited. I mean, I feel like Steve gave out this suspension and put up your Bukes because it's way too low. This should be like a 75-game suspension. Kick him out of baseball. All anyone in the commissioner wants to talk about is how no one watches baseball anymore. So we have some star players, and you suspend a guy 6 games for injuring with intent one of the game's brightest young stars. Yeah, that's great. Let's suspend him 1 start. Oh, I won't be able to stack left-handed bats against Jose Urena one night next week. It's ridiculous. This stuff is so stupid.
Hot take, Pierce, kick him out for the rest of the season?
That's stupid. That's ridiculous. It's baseball. You throw the ball at people. It's what happens. It's
no, you don't.
This
isn't 1970.
Yeah, no, that's the problem. We want to kick people out.
We definitely want to get back to
That's why people don't watch anymore, Garion. Because you want to kick people out for hitting somebody with a baseball. Whack!
Yeah, because I definitely want to watch Jose Urena pitch over watching Ronald Acuna hit. You guys are geniuses.
Steve's just sitting back and chilling. He's like, yeah.
Hope that was a Coke.
Oh, wow. Hot take sweatometer going off. All right, we have one more chaser fade to get it here. Garion, we'll let you start with this one to cool down a little. The Rangers and Angels game has the highest projected run total, but it is not the best stack play tonight. Do you agree or do you disagree?
I have to fade this. I think it is such an obvious point that you want to have a piece of tonight. I mean, especially, not that there's a ton of bats in the Angels lineup that just make you go, wow, I need to have this guy in a vacuum. But the 2 left-handed bats at the top of this order, Cole Calhoun and Shohei Ohtani, absolutely rake right-handed sinkers this season. Ohtani's got a 440-plus isolated power off sinkers. Cole Calhoun's up above 300 in that split. And guess what? Gerardo, he only throws sinkers. So not even that good to begin with. And I guess the only thing I'm worried about is Taylor Cole's probably going to last, 50 pitches? The Rangers are so left-handed heavy. They've got 6 of them in the lineup tonight that maybe the Angels can play the splits game and the platoon game out of their bullpen. But it's a bullpen game and a terrible starter. I think you have to attack this contest.
Pierce, what do you think? Rangers-Angels game. Are you going to stack this? Do you chase or fade?
I'm going to chase, not stacking it. The Padres are the leverage play. Everyone wants to play Buckholtz. They're going to default to Buckholtz, and he's not in a good spot. You can get leverage against the field, and also with your extra money, you can get basically any bat you want. Buckholtz is almost 50% fly ball rate, 50% hard contact to righties. We already mentioned the BABIP, but best of all, he was mentioned in Steve's article.
Oh, Steve, I saw that nod of approval from you when Pierce was talking, and now you know that somebody read your article.
Somebody read my article? Jesse, everybody reads the article.
Everybody.
Let's calm down. Now, hold on one second. And by the way, my article is decimated with people that are not in the lineup tonight. So once you get past the pitching, forget it. There's nothing left. But, I mean, I'm not really on this game. I wasn't really on it to begin with this morning. The lines weren't released when I was looking at all the information. I was surprised that it's as high as it is. I mean, I like a couple other spots better. I mean, the Cubs left-handed bats versus Ivan Nova. Nova 364 WOBA with the 534 FIP against them. Even the Nationals lefties against Weaver. I mean, we talked about his struggles against lefties. I feel like that's a fantastic spot. And there's one more. Oh, that's right, the Padres versus Clay Buckholtz. Avoid the chalk. Get the Padres in there.
All right, thanks, guys. Love the fire you brought. We're going to talk to you again in a couple minutes. But for now, here's DK Live editor Alex Jankowski with baseball draft strategy, how to pick the right stack.
It's time to start thinking about strategy when it comes to drafting hitters in the MLB. Today, we're going to focus on a basic strategic principle, stacking. If you've played football on DraftKings before, you're likely familiar with the concept. But for those who aren't, stacking is when you construct your roster to include several players from the same team. This could be because the team is doing really well or is in a prime matchup, or maybe it's just your favorite team and you want another reason to root for them. Regardless of the reason, many of which we'll dive into throughout the year, stacking is a must when it comes to DFS baseball because it's the best way to fully capitalize on any run-scoring play. An RBI single scores 5 DK points for the hitter, 3 for the hit, and 2 for the run it bats in. The base runner also earns 2 DK points for the run he scores, and that doesn't include the points he accrued when he reached base. If a team puts up multiple runs in an inning, and you had exposure to the 4 hitters who are responsible for the runs and the RBI, that, my friends, is a recipe for success.
Welcome back, everyone. It honestly feels like we just finished watching the NBA Finals. But opening tip exactly 2 months away, we got to talk some NBA, and here to help us through that is Julian Edlow from DK Live and Chris Meany, host and producer at Fantrax. Guys, let's get right to it. We're talking over, under here on some of the league's best players and their ADPs. Julian, first guy up is the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Thank God I got his name correctly. Currently projected at the number 3 spot in our drafts. Over, under here, and where he's going.
Yeah, I don't want this to come off the wrong way because I absolutely love the Greek Freak this season, but I think taking him in the top 3 is a tiny, tiny bit too high for me. Look, when I'm thinking of season-long guys, when I'm thinking of even DK guys, there are 3 guys who are kind of above and beyond every night in terms of consistency, and that seems to be Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and LeBron James. You can have those top 3 in whatever order you want, but those are my guys right there. Outside of that, if you want to take Giannis, we got to remember this kid is still 23 years old. He's gotten better every year of his career. He's at least getting some talks about being in the MVP discussion this year. So if you want to take him at number 4, I think that's fine with me, but that's probably where I'd start the talk on Giannis.
Now, Chris, you've seen those Instagram posts that he's just getting swole. I mean, KD's ADP is number 5 or 6, and you heard Julian's top 3. Do you agree or disagree here?
No, I would have to agree with that too, and I'm with Julian. I love the Greek Freak. How could you not? I mean, how can you not love Giannis? And it's encouraging to see his points per game go from 23 to 27, more minutes, more shot attempts, better field goal percentage, rebounds went up. The addition of Eric Bledsoe kind of hurt his assist totals just a little bit in the second half of the season. He is near elite, in my opinion, when you're drafting, of course, in redraft leagues. I would have to go with Harden and Westbrook. Those guys are going to contribute a little bit more across the board, a little bit better from three. They're going to have a free throw percentage rather as well. So, yeah, you start thinking about Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, right around 4, 5, 6. But if you're in a dynasty league, you're going to have to think about him maybe 1 or 2 there. And of course, when you're playing DK, he's going to flirt with those triple doubles numbers and give you the assist totals. But he's around 4 or 5 for me as well.
All right, moving on, but staying with the big men, Anthony Davis at ADP number 7. Chris, what do you think?
It's too low. It really is. You have to strongly consider taking him with the first overall pick. I mean, this is a guy now who's 25 years old, heading into year 7. The encouraging thing is that he's played back-to-back seasons with at least 75 games played. And that in today's NBA, that is huge. And you look at with DeMarcus Cousins' sideline. When he suffered that injury, it was 34 games Anthony Davis played without Cousins. He had 3 more shot attempts per game. He had 3 more points per game. The usage rate was through the roof. More rebounds per game, more steals. He had more games where he had 40 points. He had more games where he had at least 30 shot attempts. So just the usage rate was huge. I think we forget how good he was because Cousins, when he was on the floor, took a little bit away from what Anthony Davis does on a day-to-day basis. He can contribute across the board, hit all categories for you. Wouldn't be shocked if he led the league in field goal attempts, close to points. He was second last year, and blocks as well, as he's always a monster on the boards.
Julian, Chris Bold with the number 1 for Anthony Davis. What do you think? Over or under 7? Are you as bold to go with 1?
I am not as bold to go with 1, and it has to do with something that Chris talked about, and that would be that the injuries. Yes, Anthony Davis has played in 75 games in consecutive seasons, but as we all know, on DK, he doesn't finish that many games, or at least exits some games and comes back. That's a concern. Every season before the last 2 years, he played between 60 and 68 games. So injuries are always going to be a concern that, although Anthony Davis is maybe the best fantasy talent in the NBA, I've got to go with my top 3 in Harden, Westbrook, and LeBron there because I know that they're going to be out there. As I talked about Giannis, I would probably take Giannis number 4 and Anthony Davis number 5. So I do think 7 is too low. How I flip-flop the top 3, I think you can flip-flop Anthony Davis and Giannis at 4 and 5, whatever you feel more comfortable with there. But I just feel like in terms of the production you're going to get there, it's great, but he could revert right back to that player that's only out there for 60 games, and you don't want to pay up too high for that.
I mean, yeah, this guy is a triple threat. He's an amazing player. Julian, we'll stick with you with Kawhi moving to Toronto, probably not for too long. Do you agree with his ADP currently projected at number 9?
I do not agree with his ADP projected at number 9 because I think he should be going way later. This is just too big of a mystery to invest this high in Kawhi Leonard. Look, if you throw last year out the window in San Antonio, he had a great year there the year before, 25.5 points, 7 or so rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. He does it all on both ends of the floor, and he's going to be a good fit in Toronto. He can't afford to sit out this year as he did last year. Obviously, he's going to be on the floor. But I just think the character that he's shown us over the last year is that he's definitely going to be about himself and not about this team. And I know that is worse for the Raptors than it is for your fantasy team, but I still don't have the interest in getting a guy out there that if he suffers any kind of injury, he's going to be looking towards LA or wherever he wants to go and keeping his body healthy for that big payday when he becomes a free agent next summer. So there are just too many red flags for me at this point from a fantasy perspective, the same way that there are for the trade market in the real NBA for Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, my season long last year, I was asking Julian when I should trade Kawhi. Obviously, too late. Never too soon to get off the Kawhi train. But Chris, what do you think? You heard Julian say that he's probably thinking about himself, potentially playing with LeBron or in LA at least. Where do you think he should be drafted?
Yeah, he's a little too high as well. See, I'm willing to take that risk on Anthony Davis because the upside, the ceiling is so high. There's a lot of question marks with Kawhi Leonard, and, Julian touched on a lot of them. I'm sure he's going to excel in Toronto. It's a great team. He's going to be motivated to play, of course, with all the noise of last season, and you have to write off last season. He only played 9 games with the Spurs. He dealt with the quad injury basically the entire year, and you have to go back almost 2 years to really see how good this guy was on the court. The usage rate should be fine. The numbers, as Julian touched on, 25 points, about 6 mix boards. He can touch all categories for you. He's not going to hurt you from the line. He's not going to hurt you from the field either in the field goal percentages. And he's going to chip in with those categories that you want on DK and the blocks and the steals as well. But right around that 7 and 9 range, there's guys I'd rather have. Karl Anthony Towns, Nikola Jokic, who was a triple-double machine last year. You're going to love those bonus points on DK as well. I'm willing to roll the dice on Joel Embiid, and Oladipo, I think, is for real, and I think you'll see that in year 2 with the Pacers. So it's a little high. I think he's a second-round pick, mid-second, late second, somewhere in around there. But certainly when he's healthy and he's on the floor, he's going to be somebody you're going to want to play on DK.
Chris, Julian, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Right now, we're going to toss it to Pat Mayo and Jake Seeley talking about top RBs for the upcoming NFL season.
Out of Dallas, Ezekiel Elliott is expected to be used more in the passing game this season. He ends up going from 2.1 catches per game to 2.6 last season, so from a rookie into his second season. I still have a hard time believing the exact same coaching staff is going to continue to, he would need such a leap for me to crack inside. I have him ranked behind Kamara, I have him ranked behind Barkley, only really because I project those guys for more receptions on the year. So when we really look at it, he had 26 catches last year. Even if he gets up to 40, I feel like that's almost his ceiling at this point, unless I'm totally wrong on it. And this is what I think kneecaps him. And I do PPR rankings. In standard, it's a little bit different. But if we're talking PPR, how much more usage is he really going to get in the receiving game? This just sounds like talk to me.
But I don't even think he really needs to get that much more work. I think he can get close to 50, even maybe into the 50s.
That's basically double of what he did last year.
No, but look at what he did last year with missing 6 games. So you already factor in the missed time, and then you factor in the usage of more. So again, that's probably ceiling 50-55. But even if you just take his pace from last year, that consistency, that floor, even in PPR, because he rushes for so much, because he is such a touchdown guy, I want that. I have him at number 4 in PPR. It's one spot in front of Kamara. So if you say, I want Kamara, I'm not going to be like, you're a moron. But when it comes down to it, Ezekiel Elliott week in and week out, I know his touches are going to be there. Kamara is week in and week out. You also want him to be as efficient as he was last year. Maybe he's less efficient and gets more touches, but are those more touches going to continue after the first 4 weeks when Mark Ingram's back? I don't know. With Zeke, I know he's touching the ball 20 games, whether they're 20 times, whether they're winning or losing.
Would you go Bell or David Johnson?
I'm going Bell.
You're going Bell?
Yeah. I actually like that he's not playing.
I really want to put David Johnson at number 2 and potentially number 1. I really do. I don't have the guts to do it because I'm a coward, but this is just watching his first 2 runs in the preseason. I try not to get sucked in the preseason, so I'm not going to overreact, but I think there's a distinct possibility that he leads the league in touches.
No Amir Abdullah hype from that one play from 3-4 years ago, whenever it was? That's the excitement you're buying into here?
Yeah, I didn't buy into it then. I'm trying to temper expectations, but the path for David Johnson to be the number 1 fantasy player is there.
I was going to say, let's put it this way. Any of those 4 finishing at number 1, would it surprise anybody?
Yeah, in PPR, it would surprise me if Zeke finished at number 1. That's why he's not a part of that.
That wouldn't even surprise me, honestly.
It would surprise me. I would think that Barkley has a better case of being the number 1 player than Zeke does. Now, Zeke could be the number 3 player probably more often than Barkley ends up inside the top 3. But in terms of number 1, that's why I think that Kamara and Barkley have the edge over Elliott in the ceiling department, just because I don't think that those receptions will actually ever materialize for Elliott.
I don't need the receptions. I need the touchdowns. I could see Zeke finishing number 1 with 15, 16 touchdowns. I think that's conceivable for what he can do, even with an offense in question, even with Dak Prescott looking poor last year. And if you look at the 2 teams, too, who's got the better offensive line? It's not even a question. It's miles ahead of the Giants, what the Cowboys have, even with the Giants' improvement. And then if you look at strength of opponent, which isn't strength of schedule, because strength of schedule based on last year is a mistake. But if you look at the projections for this year of what the Giants are going to be facing, and I am a Barkley fan behind me, and I have Barkley at number 5 in half point in standard and 6th in PPR. All that being said is he's behind Zeke because the offensive line and the schedule they're facing this year, as of today, is definitively tougher than the Cowboys when it comes to running the ball.
But one of the big problems that I have, and maybe I'm just off on my projection of Dallas in general, I don't think they're going to be very good. So I don't think that he's going to get beaucoup red zone opportunities as opposed to maybe the last 2 years. And I can see them trailing in a lot of these games. And if they're not passing to him, that really marginalizes what his upside is.
So yeah, I think they're going to pass to him, and I think he's going to be basically the only option. And then that's tongue in cheek, but when I get into the red zone, he is the guy. Like I have 15 touchdowns, I could see 12-3.
Now, in full disclosure, Elliott's my number 9 overall player, my number 6 running back. I don't hate the guy.
Right.
That's just
Yeah,
I'm just gonna have to end up with no shares because I don't have him ranked, and I'm not willing to take him as high as he's going in drafts. He's a first-round pick for sure, but when we get to the very top of the board, you really have to nitpick. That's one of these problems when we talk about a lot of these players, is that when we talk about the best overall players, we only ever talk about their negatives as a way to separate them. Why do you like this guy marginally more than this guy? Which I think is unfair to, me saying, like, people are like, why do you hate Elliott so much? I don't hate Elliott. It's just I happen to like Barkley just a tad bit more, but that's me. Like you're on the other side of the fence.
Right, and that's not. And I'm with you with Dave. I would love to see David Johnston number 1. I mean, he's one of my favorite players, as you well know. So if he finished as number 1, despite the miserable Arizona Cardinals team as a whole, I would be excited. I think that's the only concern that I have with David Johnston is similar to the situation you're talking about now. Is that the defense going to stop anybody? Can the offensive line? It's almost like he has the Giants and the Cowboys problems put together.
All right, we're back with our baseball panel. Garion Thorne, this guy named Steve Buchanan, and Pierce Dietrich. It's time for Garion to step into the spotlight. We're playing Thorn in My Side.
So, Garion, you know the drill. We want 3 guys. You just hate on tonight's slate. And, of course, because it's Thorn in My Side, something has gone wrong, and there aren't 3 guys, or we can't get to them, or whatever. So, let's have your first Thorn.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm out here telling people not to put these guys in their DFS lineups, and I guess the managers got a hold of this information and decided not to put them in the real lineups either. So we're already off to a good start on Thorn on your side. But I was going to talk about Charlie Blackmon, who I know Steve liked a lot. He wrote him up this morning in his piece. But, you just don't want to play Rockies on the road. Like, I thought we've covered this enough at this point. Apparently not. But the outfielders they have, the all left-handed outfielding lineup they put together tonight, David Dahl and Carlos Gonzales specifically. David Dahl's got a .082 isolated power away from Coors Field. Cargo has a .130 isolated power away from Coors Field. I get it. They're going up against Julio Teheran. We all love to pick on Julio Teheran when he gets to face some left-handed hitters. The problem is they don't actually score any points off him. There's a key difference here, and Pierce brings this up all the time when we talk about a particular San Diego Padres left-hander, but there's a difference between WOBA that's actually attackable and WOBA that's walk-dependent. Julio Teheran's walking 18% of the left-handed bats he faces. They're not hitting for power off this guy. And SunTrust Park, unlike last season, the worst National League park for home runs and left-handed batters, according to Baseball Prospectus. I don't want any part of the left-handed bats in this lineup, specifically not Charlie Blackmon, because he's not in it.
Pierce, what do you think about this one? You like this particular type of WOBA? Is it attackable?
Well, first, we've got to excuse Garion for being Canadian. He probably isn't very familiar with American geography. But Atlanta is in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. It's the 3rd highest elevated stadium in baseball, so it's not as big of a drop going from Coors Field to Atlanta. It's also a pretty hitter-friendly ballpark. We all agree on that.
Not this season.
I can understand not playing some of these lefties for the core from Colorado if you wanted to stack elsewhere, but Dahl is crushing righties.
Yeah.
I don't see what the big deal is. I understand the walk points, and it's valid, but these guys also can hit well. Cargo is hitting fine. Geraldo Parra, I don't really want to go there, but he's decent. But Dahl, I think, is definitely worth considering in this situation. I want to completely write him off.
Steve, what about you? What's your take on this one?
Yeah, a wise man once said, dare to be different, but there's a time and a place for that. And Garion, this is not the place for it. I mean, Pierce is totally right. I mean, Dahl has been absolutely crushing the ball. And Teheran has a 5.39 FIP at home against left-handed bats with a 42%.
FIP is walk-based.
You done?
Yeah.
All right. So as I was saying, a 42% hard hit rate too. Okay, so when they make contact, they're making hard contact, 42%. Dahl's a fine option. I mean, I don't want to go with some of the other ones, but completely fading the lefties against Teheran tonight. Now we're just getting nitpicky. You're just trying to make a segment out of nothing. So whatever. Fine.
Steve, I felt like I really, like, when you were like, are you done? I felt like I was in trouble. I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm so sorry.
Hey, you know what? That's the dad mentality right there.
Yeah, it worked. Garion, what about your second Thorn?
Well, I'm happy that Steve and I can at least find common ground, that Elias Diaz is in the lineup tonight instead of Francisco Cervelli against the lefty. Thank goodness for that. My second guy I wanted to talk about, Miguel Sano, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about Twins bats and attacking Francisco Liriano, but for all Steve likes to talk about James Shields and how, James Shields isn't as bad as we think he is, et cetera,
Not.
only twice this season have opposing lineups scored more than 3 earned runs off of Francisco Liriano. I mean, he's almost so wild and erratic, he can't be that bad. He can't be someone you target necessarily because you don't know if he's going to put anything in the strike zone, and that's a problem specifically when it comes to Miguel Sano. Among the more pitchers than that, but among the guys who've thrown 80 innings this season, Liriano has the 3rd lowest zone rate of any pitcher in baseball, essentially meaning he is never in the strike zone. Miguel Sano, even though the strikeouts haven't been coming as hot and heavy as they were before the demotion, this guy among all active qualified players for their career has the lowest outside the zone contact rate. If he swings at anything that's not in the strike zone, and Liriano doesn't throw anything in the strike zone, he's going to miss. We have a 4-year sample size with this. Miguel Sano will not be in any of my lineups tonight.
Steve, you can barely contain yourself. Take it away.
Pierce, can you believe this guy? Like, can you believe that this guy's on the show with us? What the hell are you talking about? Look, I'll give him this. I'm surprised how quickly Sano's salary has gone up. That I'm pretty surprised about. He's $4,500 tonight. But in the same breath, he does have a 363 WOBA and a 203 ISO in the month of August. His numbers are pretty skewed because he's had an odd season where they sent him down and he wasn't hitting well. So it's not good numbers to go off of this year. But let's not forget that Liriano just cannot get out right-handed bats. And what did Sano do all last season? He crushed lefties, a 307 ISO to finish the year last year. It's not like this guy's completely forgotten how to hit because we've seen what he's done when he's come back up. I'm not going out of my way to get Sano in my lineup, but if I can fit him, which judging by the pitching, pretty easy to do, he absolutely can find a spot in my lineup. Not this zone coverage crap. Might as well talk about the umpires.
I was just about to say I never thought we'd see the day when Pierce and Steve would be on the same side, but then Steve, you got in there with that ump stat right there, bringing us all back. All right, Pierce, what's your take on this one?
I'm going to save the umpire data for later on in the show. I'm not playing Sano. He's hit 350, 200 ISO around there since he's come back from being demoted. That's okay. I mean, it's good, but it doesn't make me want to jump all over him. He's 35. He's still got a 35% K rate. He's got a 400 BABIP too, which he's getting a little bit lucky here. And let's not forget, the Twins are terrible against lefties. They are the worst. You can go through that lineup. None of them are hitting lefties. There may not be people on base, and Sano is one of them. He is not hitting lefties. There are so many better plays than that. I do not want to go anywhere near Sano.
All right. We got our answers there.
Thanks, guys. We'll be
Gary,
back.
and that's it. You don't get a third thorn.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fair enough.
All right, we'll be back with the 3 of you for Steve's favorite segment, Put Up Your Bukes. So we'll let you all collect your thoughts for yourselves before. But in the meantime, let's go to Brendan Glasheen, who earlier caught up with Rays outfielder Mallex Smith.
Happy to welcome Tampa Bay Rays outfielder Mallex Smith into the sweat. Mallex, let's start by talking about the Mallex Effect. There's actually a handful of Twitter accounts that describe such effect. For example, @DidMallex Effect. I think I could name off a couple more, but we'll get started. Where did that nickname come from, and how does that describe your game?
It came from Chris Archer. He was the first person to say it. And the slogan the slogan talks about my game in a way like I can affect the game in all angles, offensively, defensively, whether I run a ball down at the wall or I drop a foot down and beat it out and then steal a base or two, or hit a ball in the gap and turn into a triple, or score on the infield, not even hit, just the ball hitting the infield, score from third at home. You know, just making things happen, affecting the game in a manner that only I can.
Speed, certainly a part of your game. How do you approach improving your base running, getting on base, I think is important too, and base stealing throughout not just the off season, but during the course of the season?
Just working on my first few steps and gaining a better awareness of the games and what's the tempo of the games and what's the situation. That'll tell me how aggressive or the lack of aggression I show at the moment.
Some of your career milestones were against some big-name pitchers. Some examples, your first career hit was against Max Scherzer. Your first home run was off Matt Harvey. How much do you remember those situations, and could you take us through both of them?
Well, my first hit, first game, I just got called up. I'm leading off. Matt Scherzer's pitching. What I do remember is that apparently everybody knew that it was my debut, and I got to walk in the stadium, walk up to the plate and take my time and look around. And when I was about to step in the box, Scherzer was on the back of the mound and let me enjoy my moment, and I really appreciate that. Because he's a veteran. I was Cy Young. He could have just been like, let's go rookie, but he didn't. So I remember that. That was a big moment for me. Lots of respect for him in that manner. Then he proceeded to strike me out my first at bat on 3 pitches. But it was my third at bat off of him. It was a ball hit up the middle, not hit great, but hard enough. Daniel Murphy fielded it, but couldn't really make a play. So I ended up beating out the ball, and that was my first hit.
Before we got started today, Mallex, we were wondering, and we did some research, less than 20 players in Major League Baseball have actually wore the number 0. Why the number 0 in the back of your jersey?
I wear the number 0 purely because, I've gotten scrutinized a lot in this game, even before I made it and got drafted. So the 0 comes from just giving zero care.
Let's shift back to baseball here, Mallex. One thing people may look at when they play fantasy baseball, we call it BVP, a pitcher's history, or a batter's history against a specific pitcher. Why do some hitters have a lot of success against a certain pitcher? So, for example, in your spot, you're 5 for 6 in your career against John Lackey. On the flip side, you could have the same discussion. Why do some pitchers have a hitter's number?
Oddly enough, as much as everything seems the same, things are so different. Like, guys' deliveries are different, and just the way the ball appears to certain people are different. Like, there's some guys that I would possibly think like, oh, okay, this is a good guy to hit off of. Another teammate will say, I don't pick up the ball well. Things like that play effect. And it doesn't seem, you will wonder why it would be like that, but it is. And then you just not picking up the ball when you got 0.4 seconds to figure out if it's a fastball, slider, changeup, cutter, split finger, and then deciding to hit. That can definitely ruin your chances of getting a hit.
Mallex Smith, Tampa Bay Rays outfielder, thanks so much for joining the Sweat.
Thank you very much.
And Mallex Smith, he had 15 DK fantasy points today in New York. Pretty good. All right, back to baseball. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for, the self-proclaimed highest-rated segment on this show. Put up your bukes with Steve Buchanan.
Look, and he's moved into the middle panel.
The crowd goes wild.
Exactly.
You guys wonder why his ego is so big. I mean, this is like a parent who the kid reaches 13 and they're just a little tear and like, I don't know what happened.
I know.
You're raising
so
a monster
cute.
here.
Oh, okay, let's get ready to it. Steve, you're going to pick your top 3 guys on tonight's slate. Tell us why they're your top guys, obviously, and give us fantasy point projections for each player. Gary and Pierce will tell you why you think you're a liar.
Yeah.
Exactly what they think, and of course your logic. So your first pick.
Yeah, this is Put Up Your Bukes, which is loved by many, hated by none. Let's just make sure to get that in there too. I'm going to go with John Gray at 25 DK fantasy points. They originally had him in there thinking Acuna wouldn't play tonight, but boy, he's a tough guy. He's going to be back in there at the leadoff spot. So I'm not feeling as great as I was before. But look, on a slate where there's so many shaky options at pitcher, Gray looks like the pinnacle there. I mean, he's gone 7 innings in 4 of his last 5 starts. Since being called back up to the majors, 233 WOBA with a 3.47 FIP, which includes 3 starts at Coors Field. And the Braves can be a tough team. There's no doubt about that. But when you seriously go through this list of pitchers tonight, you're going to look at yourself and go, who am I going to roster? Gray's got to be the obvious choice here.
Pierce, what do you think?
Gray's probably the most talented, but he's not the guy I'm going to go with. Since he's called up, come back up, 21% K rate, but he's got a 14.1% swinging strike rate. That doesn't make sense. His K rate should be a lot higher. He's not finishing batters off, but he's getting away with it because his BABIP is 200. Eventually, those balls are going to fall for hits, and he's going to run into trouble. And tonight could be the night. He leans on his slider a lot, and the Braves are the 5th best in baseball against the slider.
Gary, to finish us off, what do you think?
I'm going to kind of go the opposite line of thinking for what Pierce said. I'm going to look at it and say that because the swinging strike rate is so high, the strikeouts have to come at some point. And on this slate tonight, there doesn't even have to be that many. Like, usually when we have a slate full of bad pitching, there are at least some guys towards the mid-tier or the bottom who have strikeout upside. They just don't happen to be any good. We don't even have any of those archetypes on this slate. Gray is the only pitcher on the slate tonight that has a 22% plus strikeout rate, and his is like 27%. The disparity between him and everyone else in terms of strikeout upside is almost insane to think about. Sure, the Braves don't strike out a whole lot. They're great against the slider, as Pierce talked about, but I don't really fear this lineup necessarily, and I think Gray is the most talented guy. So on a night like tonight, let's maybe go with some talent.
Not too much debate for the first pick. So, Steve, what's your second pick?
Just for the record, Gary was crapping on my segment, then agreed with what I had to say.
Well, when you pick
the
best pitcher of the night, yeah, I guess I'm kind of hamstrung.
I mean, you could have debated it. I mean, maybe he's out of the zone or something. I don't know. All right, Lucas Duda for 16 DK fantasy points tonight. I mean, I love this spot against Sam Cavillo. I mean, this is a two-headed beast for Cavillo. First of all, he's bad on the road, and then he's bad overall against lefties. So that's not a good mix there when you're going to be facing Duda. In these spots, 438 WOBA with a 6.38 FIP for him. Overall against lefties, 358 WOBA allowed, 4.76 FIP with 5 of his 14 home runs. I think the Royals lefties could be another sneaky play here tonight, because literally every offense is in play here tonight. All the pitching is trash tonight. But Duda, I love him for 16 DK fantasy points. I think they're going to have a hard time debating this one.
Gary, to give you the opportunity, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I guess two things. One, Cavillo. Two, I mean, Lucas Duda, 145 isolated power at Kauffman. We can throw around home road splits all we want, but they're hollow if you don't actually explain the context. Like, sure, he's not good on the road. That doesn't mean he's not going to be good at Kauffman Stadium. There's so many places to attack tonight. Why would we be attacking one of the best pitchers' parks we have? I mean, Duda has just not shown me enough consistently for me to want to lock him in on a night where there is a lot of places to go in terms of bad pitching matchups.
Pierce.
Don't forget, Garian's a Blue Jays fan, so just take that and just toss it out the window. Go ahead, Pierce.
Yeah, so I'm going to call him Gaviglio because that G has got to be doing something. We don't just do I don't know. Maybe
I agree.
I know it's I don't know, but whatever. Anyway, I like Duda tonight. 425 xWOBA against sinkers, and that's what Cavillo does. He throws a lot of sinkers, and against left-handed bats, he's got a 465 xWOBA allowed. So Duda probably is in line for a home run tonight. I know it's not a home run-friendly ballpark, but it lines up pretty well with pitch mix versus what the batter hits.
A lot of pronunciation corrections here on the sweat. So, Steve, what's your last pick?
If I can't pronounce the names, but the information's great, who cares? I'm going to go with Tyler Austin for 16 DK fantasy points. I mean, when he's been playing, he's been a force against left-handed pitching. Enters tonight with a 364 WOBA with a 298 isolated power and a 35% hard hit rate. He's been seeing some time batting fifth for the Twins, which is not a bad spot by any means. You likely won't see a lot of ownership tonight because of the matchup against Liriano, which I'm not sure. We were talking about how the Twins probably won't get looked at too much. But, like I mentioned, Liriano against right-handed batters, 360 WOBA, 5.72 FIP with 12 of his 14 home runs allowed. I mean, Austin, when he gets a hold of one, he can absolutely park one. So here, I don't mind him at all.
Pierce, are you buying a Tyler Austin at 3,800?
No, not tonight when you can pretty much get anybody you want. And there's a problem with Todd Austin. If you look at how he does against lefties that throw the changeup, he's got a .098 WOBA, below 100 against the changeup. And guess what? Liriano likes to throw to righties. He uses his changeup a lot. I don't think it's going to work out very well for Tyler Austin. Oh, by the way, the Twins are terrible against lefties.
And Gary, and last but not least, the guy with the best shirt on the panel. What do you think?
Well, to pick up where Pierce left off, 0.016 opponent isolated power off of his changeup this season. It really has been his best pitch by a wide margin. Target field has been terrible all season for right-handed batters. And I just got finished talking about Miguel Sano, who is basically the exact same guy as Tyler Austin. Tyler Austin, low outside the zone contact rate. Tyler Austin, heavy chase rate. Tyler Austin, huge swinging strike rate at 19%. These are not the types of guys you want to use with Liriano, who's going to be consistently trying to get you to fish outside of the zone. They might take their walks, but they're not going to hit anything hard.
All right, put up your bukes. Great segment,
Great.
Steve. Thank you, as always. But before we let you go, you know what time it is. We want your slate-approved pick. This is the player that you're rostering tonight, no matter what. And your pick can be from the whole show. Doesn't have to just be from this segment. So, Gary, start us off.
It's got to be John Gray. Again, I talk about the strikeout upside. It's just nowhere to be found on this slate. I'll take my chances with Gray in Atlanta.
Steve, who you taking?
Yeah, from the Buke segment. I'm gonna go with Duda tonight. He's gonna go yard.
Pierce, who are you taking?
Dak Washington and St. Louis. Adrian Johnson, extreme hitters umpire. Last time he called a Nationals game, they scored 29 runs.
We love those ump stats for Pierce.
I love it.
Thanks, guys. We miss you already and your ump stats. All right, our football experts are getting ready to join us. We need a couple minutes for Reid to actually change his hat from host to analyst. So let's go to Brendan Glasheen, who's joined by Adam Levitan, to talk about what he's learned from tracking usage in the NFL preseason.
Talking NFL preseason, week 1 usage with Adam Levitan. He ain't about performance, but he's into how coaches are building their depth charts towards the start of the regular season. Let's begin with running back Levy. Who flashed true workhorse potential in preseason game number 1?
Yeah, the easy answer is Christian McCaffrey, who, maybe we should have seen this coming. The Panthers talked about it all offseason. Oh, we're going to ride Christian McCaffrey. We're going to give him 250 carries, which sounds crazy for a guy who is somewhat smallish and was inefficient as an inside runner last year, particularly after they added CJ Anderson. I thought that they would limit Christian McCaffrey, but 14 snaps. Cam Newton played in the first preseason game. Christian McCaffrey was out there for 14 snaps, got 4 carries, including a goal line carry, converted it for a 2-yard touchdown, also got his usual 2 targets in those 14 snaps. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is such a good receiver out of the backfield. If we can tack on even, say, 180 carries, 170 carries, he's going to have a big season.
Shifting to wide receiver, any wideout in particular that's caught your attention here in these first few weeks of training camp and now into the first week of the preseason?
Yeah, I thought the interesting stuff was coming out of Tampa, where they said Chris Godwin was going to be a starter or the starter across from Mike Evans. That's not what we saw in the first preseason game. We saw Deshaun Jackson line up as the starter across from Mike Evans, but he did rotate pretty heavily. We saw Adam Humphries play a lot in the slot, and then we saw Godwin get 8 snaps with the first stringers, and we saw Deshaun Jackson also get 8 snaps with the first stringers. I'm concerned that these guys are going to cancel each other out a bit because the Bucs don't seem to trust either one in the slot. So in 3 wide formations, we know Mike Evans is going to be out there. It looks like Adam Humphries is going to be out there, and that's only going to leave one of Godwin or Jackson. So I like both their talents. I think Deshaun Jackson has been an underrated player throughout his career. I think Chris Godwin is a future star, but as long as they're rotating, it's going to be tough to get too excited about either one.
Yeah, those snap counts are pretty even so far down in Tampa. And at tight end, there's one in Jacksonville and another in Arizona you're high on. Tell us why that you like both of those guys.
Yeah, Austin Seferian-Jenkins was a big prospect coming out of college. Just a huge guy. He's like 6'8", 260, runs well, but certainly can be a big-time red zone threat and had plenty of chances and performed pretty well, I thought, last year for the Jets. Signs a free agent deal with the Jaguars, and now he's their unquestioned first-string tight end, 13 of 15 first-string snaps for Austin Seferian-Jenkins. In preseason week 1, I think he could have a bigger role than people give him credit for. You can get him really late in season long. And then kind of a buzz guy, you mentioned Ricky Seals-Jones down there in Arizona, a wide receiver prospect in high school, another big guy, kind of an oversized wideout, doesn't block much, but that's not what we want out of our tight ends. And given the depth chart in Arizona, where there's not much behind Larry Fitzgerald in the pass game outside of maybe David Johnson and maybe Christian Kirk or Bryce Butler, something like that, Ricky Seals-Jones has a real chance to make an impact.
It's not about performance, it's about usage, according to Adam Levitan. Check him out on the DK Playbook.
All right, it's time to talk football, and that's why I'm solo hosting this segment. Reid has transformed from host to analyst, and here along with Reid is Jeff. All right, guys, we're talking ADP. Specifically, we're playing over-under with veteran quarterbacks. These are the only active NFL QBs to have played 200-plus NFL games. So first up, Reid, the one, the only Tom Brady at QB2. Too high, too low for this ADP number?
I think this is one spot too high. I have him at QB3. Look, you're talking about one of the greatest in the game, but I do think there's some regression, Jesse, with the guy. He's getting older. I think you're going to have to manage his reps, especially in the preseason. When it comes to Brady, we see him go out with that first preseason game with the back spasms. We'll see what happens tonight, but with Cooks gone, obviously you have Gronk, Edelman coming off of that 4-game suspension. Well, remains to be seen if Sony Michel's going to be healthy. But yeah, I'm at one spot just because with the top guys, with Rodgers and Wilson, for me, they have the ability to get those yards on the ground, those points on the ground. So QB3 for me.
Jeff, Tom Brady at QB2. What do you make of this?
I think Adam Kaufman made these rankings. I mean, that's clear. QB2 it's way too high, in my opinion. Look, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, but he's not the greatest fantasy quarterback this year. And he's not in my top 4, quite frankly. A couple names I got in front of him. Russell Wilson, for sure. I got Jimmy Garoppolo in front of him if you want to cause a riot in Boston. But look, I think this is a little bit too high. A guy who's going to be without Julian Edelman for the first part of the year. They still got a lot of question marks at wide receiver 2. No, he's 41. It's not elite Tom Brady anymore. It's very good Tom Brady, but.
We will just not tell people here what you just said about Jimmy Garoppolo. All right, anyway, next we got Drew Brees. Jeff, Brees at QB9, over or under for you?
This is pretty low. I mean, I'm not a huge Drew Brees guy. I'm not going out and grabbing him, at all costs or anything. The Saints did convert to more of a power running team last year, but QB9 for Drew Brees is really low. I mean, I think he had his lowest touchdown total last year, maybe like ever, and he still threw 27 touchdowns or something like that. So I think you're due for maybe a bit of a positive regression in terms of touchdown passes. They brought in Cameron Meredith to spice up the wide receiver core a little bit. He's still got 10 in there. I definitely think this is too low. I'd actually have him ranked. I have him ranked in front of Brady. So.
Wow. All right, Reid, do you think that Drew Brees should be at 9 for his ADP, or do you think that he should be higher up there, maybe in front of Tom Brady, like Jeff thinks?
Not Tom Brady. I think you got top 5 or top 6. I think Drew Brees, when you look at, he had a down year, but he still came in second in the total yards passing. So Drew Brees, yes, he's getting older like Tom Brady. Yes, he's taking notes from Tom Brady. We saw he had 8 fewer passes last year than he did in his 2016 season. So when you look at the running back duo that the Saints have, I think you have to pass a little bit more in those first 4 games when Ingram is going to be suspended. You don't want to overuse Kamara. So I do think there's an uptick. I do think he will get, obviously, more touchdowns in 27. So I'm around 5 or 6 where Watson and those guys are. But yeah, not as high as Brady.
All right, what about QB12 Ben Roethlisberger? Reid, what do you think about this one? What a guy.
I know. He's a QB1 in a 12 team if you're talking about season-long redrafts. He's got the best offense, arguably, in the NFL when you have Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell at your disposal. I'm going to have some stake in that offense. I don't think you lose too much with Todd Haley leaving. But you know what you have with Big Ben. I mean, you have a guy whose home road splits are completely different when he's away. You have a guy who's probably going to get hurt 1 or 2 games. But QB11, he has one of the best offenses, or QB12, excuse me, he has one of the best offenses. So if you want to go one spot higher, you can, but we're splitting hairs. Big Ben is right around there at QB10 or 11 for me.
Jeff, what do you think? Big Ben, he's at QB12. Do you want to go over or under that?
No, I'd say that's actually pretty much perfect. I look at Ben Roethlisberger as a better daily fantasy play personally because he always pops off. He's got those offensive weapons, which Reid alluded to. Antonio Brown and him often just connect for a huge stack at least 2 or 3 times a year, it seems like. Season long, Reid brought up the injury history too. I would understand drafting like a Matthew Stafford in front of him, just from a more of a safety perspective. Matthew Stafford, bit younger, less injury history over the last few years to worry about. I mean, we're in preseason. Ben's like falling down and getting concussed already. So, it's already started. But at the same time, the upside is there. I think QB12 is actually a really good rank. Again, more of a daily fantasy play for me, but I'm right there on this rank.
All right, Jeff, finally, we get to Eli Manning QB 27. Wow. That's got to hurt. Are you going over or under this?
Man, poor Eli. 27. Who did these?
That's
this
a burn.
Anti-New York Giants fan. I don't know. That's crazy. No, look, I mean, Eli obviously coming off the horrible year, but I think there's going to be some positive, movement in terms of his fantasy play. I mean, the new coach, the Ben McAdoo era is over. Pat Shurmur seems to have things under control. You have the running back there, which should improve, take a little bit of heat off there in Saquon Barkley, and it should improve Eli Manning's efficiency. I'm expecting him to be in the top 20 for sure. I think if things go right for the New York Giants and their O-line improves, I could see him cracking the top 12. So I think this is way too low. I'd have him more, at the very least in the low 20s.
Reid, QB 27. I mean, come on.
No, I mean, we talked about it earlier, too. I mean, on the DK, the slate, he's lower than some backup quarterbacks, or priced lower than some backup quarterbacks. No, I agree with Jeff here. I mean, you have him. I mean, at 27, he's by Tyrod, or however you pronounce his name, Tyrod, and Flacco. I mean, that's kind of atrocious. You have the weapons there. OBJ, you have Evan Ingram, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard. So he has the weapons. And it wasn't too long ago where we saw him, 30-plus touchdowns. He always averages around 65, 68% completion. He's definitely a QB2. Obviously, you're not going out. You could stream quarterbacks and get Eli week to week. He's going to have these big games. He's going to have a big game with those offensive. And Shurmur is a offensive coach. And so I do think that 27 is way, way, way too low. I think you have to go, probably around, like Jeff was saying, QB2, so 23, 24 for me. Maybe even higher. I wouldn't mind drafting him as a low-end QB2.
All right, let's talk preseason strategy. So we got a 3-game slate tonight, including a Super Bowl rematch. Jeff, how do you even approach building a lineup for preseason week 2?
Well, the first thing you do is see who's playing, Jessie. I mean, and that
wow.
It sounds so simplistic, but that is, 80% of the battle in preseason.
There we go.
You have to know who's going to get the snaps. If Tom Brady's going to play tonight, but he plays 2 series and you roster him, I mean, you're done. So that's the big part of preseason is getting to go look at the beat writers, go look at the latest updates of who's going to play the snaps tonight, who's going to get the start at QB, who's sitting, who's not playing, and then go from there. And the other part of it is you want to get good skilled players who might be going up against backup defenses. So, a player who's going to play deep into the game, maybe like a Sam Darnold tonight, who might not just start, but play deeper into the game against backup defenses. That's where you might get, that pop in terms of big fantasy scores.
Reid, it can be kind of difficult sometimes to figure out who's playing. You can follow the reports and whatnot, but what do you think? What's your strategy for building a lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chase Daniels, the first preseason game, was, heavily rostered and one of the better performers. But yeah, Jeff's right. You got to do your research. Go on Twitter, follow Adam Levitan. He does some good things about preseason snaps, and there are some starters to mine if you want to do that, maybe get the touchdown upside. But yeah, do your research and find those guys who are in battles, position battles, who are fighting for their job. I think, Mason Rudolph is a guy that I really like out of Pittsburgh who is fighting for that QB3 or even potentially QB2. I mean, Tomlin has come out and said Landry Jones's QB2 spot isn't solidified. So now that might be coach's talk, but he's going to want to see how these guys perform and how they perform with the starters. And so now if you get a QB3 with starters, potentially now you're getting more upside with these guys, these skill position guys who can have opportunities. And so for me, I'm looking at Mason Rudolph. I'm looking at other guys in New England. Look, Tom Brady is not. There's no revenge narrative with Tom Brady and the Eagles in this matchup. So I'd rather go elsewhere. But yeah, do your research if you want to play preseason.
Don't let Phillies fans hear you say that. Now, before I let you go, I'm going to need those slate-approved picks. Who's your lock for tonight's preseason 3-game slate? Hit me with it, Reid.
I'm going to say Mason Rudolph. I think he has a QB controversy over that QB3, QB2. Dobbs is, I don't think he's going to, they're not going to roster 4 QBs. So for me, Mason Rudolph looks really good. So I'm choosing Mason.
All right, Jeff, who are you taking?
Yeah, I don't mind Mason Rudolph. Nate Sudfeld might be another quarterback, but I'm going to go with Jacob Hollister of the New England Patriots. Patriots are down a ton of wide receivers right now. I mean, some of them might be playing injured or limited. Gronkowski never plays in the preseason, or he's not playing tonight. Hollister should get a lot of snaps here. He's an undrafted free agent. The Patriots like him. They're going to give him a long look, I think. So Jacob Hollister, tight end.
All right, thanks for the time, Jeff. I'm going to transform Reid back into a host for our closing. So Reid, did you learn anything today on the Sweat?
Yeah, I mean, Emerson who is I think what I learned, and Garion. clearly, I get really defensive, I guess, with my shirt as well. So, yeah, learned quite a bit. It was really fun.
Yeah, I actually learned, this is just something I learned from you just when we were standing here, is that we call these shirts Hawaiian shirts, but they're actually called Aloha shirts, and we can confirm this because Reid is Hawaiian. He's Hawaiian, yeah, so pretty amazing. But yeah, that's going to do it for tonight's edition of The Sweat. So we've been doing this all week. We're going to continue to do it. There's going to be a show again tomorrow night at 6. And hey, man, thanks for filling in for Emerson. Maybe we make this like permanent. I don't know.
Maybe. And one last thing. At least Jeff didn't say Submergio Garcia.
Do you want to give us an update on where he is?
I think he's T12 at -4. So Jeff, if you're still tuned in, he's not 112. He's actually doing really well for Submergio Garcia. Yeah. Probably going to change his name back to Sergio Garcia.
And with that, this has been The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He's Reid Fowler, and we will see you guys later.